Welcome, everyone. This is Ron Visconti, and we're going to talk about the new workplace realities. Want to qualify a little bit. When Randy put together his comments, most of the presentation today will be addressed towards the baby boomer. However, there's lots of implications for other groups, and we also will entertain your questions, any job search questions. But a lot of the research he's done has been targeted for baby boomers, and it has implications for all generations. But welcome everyone, phase two careers. And just so you know, if you're new to phase two careers, we're a resource for the over 40 professional. We've been around since 2010. We have several programs coming. Tomorrow, if you're in an active job search, we have a panel of job search experts. I have Ashley Wright from Agilon. I have Teresa Chapman from Slingshot Connections. I have just Jeff Gallipo from Life Moves, and myself will all serve on a panel tomorrow and give feedback and answer your questions about job search. And on Thursday, we have a branding expert. She's great. She's written a book, and she's going to talk about getting on top, putting message where your audience will see it. It's mainly geared for a small business audience, but again, you could learn from any branding expert. And finally, at the end of the month, we're going to have a professional women's webinar, which is a very special event. So lots of things cooking, and but we have a lot of information today. And to tell you a little bit about Randy, I've known Randy for a long time. He's been high tech for over 30 years. He works with all levels of professionals in leadership, career management, positioning, job search portfolio, career development. He's a requested speaker on a number of topics. He's consistently writes for the Forbes Coaching Council. And if you need to reach Randy, that's where to get him, randyblock.com. So good morning, Randy. How are you?
Hey there. I'm just fine. Thanks, Ron. Been looking forward to this with a little trepidation, but looking forward to this.
So it's a new program for you, but
Yeah.
a lot of information for baby boomers, a lot of implications for other groups, but you're going to answer any and all questions at the very end. So at this point, I'll let you share your screen and let you go into your slides.
You bet. Now, this is always the fun part. Okay, and I want to go. Bear with me, everybody. We're going to get there. Promise. Now it's going to look like the share. Now, how do I get? Here we go.
There you go.
And you're hiding on me. Come here. Yeah, this has been an. I've got a few things to talk about in terms of I always like to start the show, you know. Okay. I have a few, in the interest of full disclosure, what I wanted to share with you. The first one is I'll be 74 in April. So I was born in 1947. And the other disclosure is I've worked on a straight commission. My last salary was in 1972. So I've been living on my wits and good looks for a long time. Mainly now it's just the wits. And I also, full disclosure, I need to continue to work over the next 10 years. I need to work. I need to bring income for myself. You know, and in essence, in this particular in this presentation, it started off with Ron and I talking briefly at the beginning, and then it sort of had a mind of its own, and that's why it went into what has changed for me and a lot of my clients who are boomers. And so I did a lot of my research on my own, you know, going to the American Retirement Institute, et cetera. And Transamerica has done a lot of surveys in this area. But my own clients have unwittingly, or I'm not going to quote any of them, of course, but they've helped to make this happen. The other thing I wanted to mention was since this is my first one, I would love comments, questions, even about the style in which I presented this. Whatever. This is really important because this is probably going to be an evolving project. I mentioned to Steve Weiss, who's on the call. I will probably more than likely add to this after this, based on your comments and questions. So yes, this is a beta presentation in a way. It's not, as I told Ron earlier, it's not about networking, interviewing, branding, writing a resume, all of that, job search. This is a little different, and I hope a lot of the things that I talk about here, that I'm wrong. Okay, so basically, Transamerica Center for Retirement did a survey, and they said, what is old? Younger generations see old as by age 70. Too old to work, most generations, including boomers, say it's age 75. The expected lifespan of a boomer is age 90 by works, and so that leaves, if we do the math here, that leaves 15 years with little or no income from working. And so it's important that we look at what words mean, how they're perceived, and not necessarily oh, I'm not old. What are you talking? No, you may think that, but others may perceive you as being old. So here's just a real quick one here of people who are successful over the age of people. Colonel Sanders started his little deal at age 65. Grandma Moses started painting at age 83. Clara Peller, that may not ring a bell with you, but where's the beef? She was 80 when she started those commercials. Robert Roger, if that doesn't ring a bell, at age 73, he started Roger's Thesaurus. Oscar Swan, no bells. I get that. It was new to me too. He is the oldest Olympian to receive a medal in the Olympics. It was in 1920 in the Summer Olympics, and he got a silver medal for shooting. He was 72 at the time. And Frank McCourt, if that doesn't ring a bell, he got a Nobel Prize for writing his novel Angela's Ashes at age 67. And then, of course, everybody here, since I'm going to make this apolitical, everybody here you can pick your own favorite politician who's over age 70, who's in office or was in office. So how about that for a nice sidestep? What we often see are the pros and cons of hiring the older worker. And I have made an effort now to go out to the younger generation myself. And I've been talking to people, so I got this firsthand, as well as doing the internet research. But the pros are certainly more knowledge, wisdom, and life experience, more responsible, reliable, and dependable. Can work with different personality types. Let's face it, we faced a bunch of different ones. Most are well connected. I'm afraid your network is pretty important to bring to the table. And I'm going to be talking about this more, but a valuable resource for training, coaching, and mentoring. So the cons of hiring the older worker, and these are real. Higher healthcare costs, certainly. When you age 60 and over, you become much more expensive to insure. They often will command higher wages. They're less open to new ideas. That I am not going to change the way I do things, or I really doubt this is going to work. And a lot of boomers are hardwired. Boomers cannot be managed. Now, what I mean by that is the difference between management and leadership. A lot of Gen Xers are learning a lot about leadership now, but they are not necessarily what I would call truly qualified leaders. So boomers don't want to be told command and control. They don't respond well to that, or none of us respond to micromanage. And boomers are known to prefer traditional roles. VP of marketing, director of marketing, group leader marketing. That's not how it works now. Okay, and I put this in as kind of a fun thing to look at. This is the Social Security actuarial tables. Okay, and life expectancy. This is what insurance companies refer to. And everybody's glancing down to their age. And So you'll notice the asterisk after each, you have to minus 1 year off of each one of these. That brings it up to date in terms of life expectancy because of COVID. But as you can see, we're losing a lot of men here over time. There's 75 million of us, 78 were born. Now we're decreasing it by quite a bit. So this is reality. And today, basically, the ages are age 57 to 75. And then of course, women always live longer than us, which is kind of important, I suppose. But I just thought that was kind of interesting, what the life expectancy is. As I said, I'll be 74 in April. I'll be 75 the following year, which means I've got 11 years left, according to them. Oh, I don't know about that, but sure, I might live longer. But I want everybody to know that I need, as I mentioned earlier, I need to supplement my income from my investments and from Social Security, and I have to look at really hard about creating income for myself. So here are some challenges that I've seen, to boomers. One is 76% of boomers don't have savings to cover expenses late in life, so it's essential to generate income for quite some time. You will have to do this, and it will more than likely not be a full-time permanent position. The typical career pyramid is no longer attainable. What I mean by that is not everybody can be in the C-suite. The higher, it's always been true, the higher you go up in the career ladder, the less opportunity there is, because there can only be one CEO and only like 6 people in the C-suite. So this, especially if I think I talked to a fellow the other day, and he was looking for a coach, and he was talking about he wanted to be a VP, et cetera. And we finally got down to age. And I said, can I ask how old you are? And he said he was 55. And I said, and now you're looking for your first VP slot. I said, oh yeah, I got to do this. And there's an old adage that we used to go by as when I was a headhunter, and now I don't know how true it is, but for whatever it's worth, if you spend 6 years or longer, it used to be 6 years or longer in middle, 6 years or longer in middle management, you're probably going to stay there. You're never going to rise above where you are. And I think the question comes up that if you haven't got your VP stripes by age 50, it's not going to happen. More than likely, people are going to question they're going to question your ambition and your career management. So again, the career pyramid, people are fighting literally tooth and nail for those top C-suite jobs, or moving up. And companies, of course, continue to flatten out, especially after COVID, with people moving on in remote working. It's really, truly flattening out. And there's just not those kinds of jobs anymore. I mean, well, I'll put it this way, they're much limited. Health and healthcare costs are expected to skyrocket between now and, based on that table, boomers become a risk factor because of healthcare costs, not just the cost of it, but let's face it, they were inoculating or vaccinating, jabbing people at ages certain and older and above ages. It was like 80, 75, and then 70 to 75, because they were the most vulnerable. And I believe that these kinds of strains and their variants will be around for a long time. I had to bring this up. Issues are starting to emerge: depression, dementia, and Alzheimer's. Yeah. Oh, I'm not. That doesn't apply to me. Well, maybe not right now. Maybe you and your spouse are just fine. But we can no longer ignore this possibility. It just is. We have to be watching out for this. What I'm doing is I'm building a case to having to make money until you're 80. That's what I'm building a case for. Many boomers are in the sandwich generation. They're taking care of their own kids and their own parents. My parents did pass away, so that and my son graduated from college, and he's got a job with the Space Force now. But but I can see what it would be like, especially if you're homeschooling during COVID, and your parents, as boomers' parents, are still alive. I mean, this is a lot to deal with. And all my clients, all of them, always look at how automation is affecting what they do. Everybody does. That means artificial intelligence and machine learning. people in finance and operations, marketing, sales, human resources. Okay, they're all looking at they are all becoming up to date. There was a, let's see, what was it? I guess Harvard came out with a study about a year ago saying that if a decision can be made in less than 4 or 5 seconds, it's going to be automated, and that's happening right now. Okay, so it's going, prior to COVID, it was advancing quickly, and now it's going like light speed. So you need to be very aware of whatever you do, what is automation, how will automation be used as a tool? It's not going to threaten you, but how can you use it as a tool to be more productive? Okay, so here's some more realities and recommendations. Recognize that a typical full-time career peaks after your mid-40s in the corporate world. That means your earning years. I've seen this. Oh, this is from my own personal experience. You're pretty much that VP piece and all of that. You hopefully you've made it by age 50, but after that, your earning start to decrease as well. Okay, after age 50, and that will probably continue. Full-time positions will be less accessible to boomers. That's happening. I'm seeing that a lot now. The age discrimination is alive and well. Resumes for boomers are becoming increasingly impractical. Resumes, for those who've heard me before, resumes are a detriment to networking. It only says, do you know a full-time job for me? And if you're networking with it and someone sends your resume over to someone else, they probably won't talk to you because they don't know a full-time job. So what I'm saying is networking stops resumes stop networking in its place. It's not going to help. It will become increasingly less practical to lead with a resume. Better lead with a bio and a short-term summary. It's what hasn't changed is developing your personal brand. It is your best tool to get in front of people. And I have this whole thing in personal branding. Personal branding says, you ask the question, are you happy with your revenue? And are you happy, are you as productive as you want to be? And you sit in front of a decision maker and you say, full-time, part-time, or short-term contract. Remember, it's not what you can do, but I had a conversation with a client this morning and they said, it's always important to go to where people are, not where they should be. Really, really important. Okay, so personal branding does not go out of style. One more time. Come on, let's go. It's not advancing here. When you're sitting in front of a decision maker with a one-page summary, I'll admit you, Mariella. Where'd she go? I can't admit her.
Oh, I'll admit her.
I got it. She always comes in fashionably late for me. Anyway, you have more, but when you're sitting in front of when you're finally in front of a decision maker or a person who has budget responsibility, et cetera. And remember, it's always about revenue and productivity, but you say, hey, there's 3 ways I can help you: full-time, part-time, or short-term contract. You will not have gotten there with a resume. You have gotten there with a one-page summary and a referral. Oh boy. Okay. For some reason, this is not advancing. Okay. Here's an example of what others have done. People over age 60 have found fulfillment, and this is pretty, here we go. Frank Gallagher, 65, and he's now working as a part-time photographer and blog editor, and he will be for a while. That's pretty age proof. I'm happy in my work, finding fun, says Frank. There's a picture of Frank. And this next person is, I had this, Judith Henry, same. And she's found life. She's age 65. She's found other things to do. And late bloomers and selling her artwork. She kind of has it all. I found this is pretty interesting. Self-employment rises by age, which makes sense in a lot of ways. But you can see age 65 to 69, 70 to 74, 60 to 64, it goes up significantly. So I'm thinking that if you're spending a lot of time, like once again, making a full-time, if you're a boomer, making full-time employment your #1 priority to create revenue for yourself, well, maybe, maybe not. I think that it's going to become more and more difficult as time goes on. I think I'd be spending more time on developing your network with a good personal brand and talking to organizations that are interested in either saving money or increasing market share or increasing the revenue. So, by the way, I'm happy to send this to anybody who's interested. This email or this presentation. So here's where I'm seeing a lot of traction with my senior clients, if you will: advisor, mentor, coach, guide, instructor, counselor, teacher, professor, trainer. It's time to pass the torch, people. And so this is a big one, and it's important that you see yourself now, and not as an extra pair of hands or someone. Are you looking for someone extra here? But as a coach, I don't solve people's problems as a coach. That's not my job. My job is to ask questions and show them some of the tools, but they're the ones that have to figure it out. They're the ones that have to basically do it and be responsible for the outcome. And that's true for almost everything up here. Okay, so if you think, like, I got into coaching initially from being a headhunter, I said I want to help people, and that was just the wrong reason to go into coaching, to be honest. And again, we have self-employment, as you saw by the previous graph, running your own business, consulting. This is probably the only way to go if you're mid-50s and above now, to create that long-term revenue. Remember, this gives you an opportunity to not only create income, but to keep a healthy lifestyle and to live longer and pay the bills. The number of people that have come to me, both probably as a coach, actually, in the last 20 years, actually, I just want to go to HP and spend my last 6-7 years and retire there. Well, it doesn't work like that. Not anymore. It used to, but not anymore. The key word for all of this is relevancy, revenue, productivity, also artificial intelligence. As I mentioned before, using it as a tool. And some of my senior clients are starting to participate. People are asking the question, participate in strategy. Hey, help us with a roadmap. Now that we seem to be coming out of COVID, help us with a roadmap about where we go from here. 3 important events since I've been working. The first one was 9/11, and a year and a half, 2 years after 9/11, people said, we don't care what you did in the 90s. That's irrelevant. How do we solve problems now? Now, the second significant date was 2008, the Great Recession. And about 2010, companies are asking the same thing. Certainly what you did in the 90s was useless, doesn't matter at all, it's totally irrelevant. And perhaps what you or how you solve problems in the aughts probably may not apply. And guess what? We are in a similar situation now with COVID. And some people see this as a paradigm shift about how we see things and do things. So I read that there was he's a leadership coach. I can't think of his name. Recalls. Yeah, it's one of the things starts to go. But anyway, he said with paradigm shifts, everybody starts from the same position with a white sheet of paper. And partially, he's right on this. Okay, we've got COVID, we've got hybrid workplace, we've got a bunch of things coming up. What's the best way to reach a customer? What's the best way to maintain market share now? Okay, so if you're relevant about ideas about any of these 3 topics, this is what people talk about now. Keep learning every day. Be curious. Some of you may know that I'm a brain-based performance coach, and it's important that you keep that brain active. I ask my clients on a fairly regular basis, what did you learn today? Okay, the brain loves novelty. It loves new things. 2 years ago, Oxford did a study they found out that 15 minutes, just 15 minutes of aggressive learning every day. It can be anything. It can be your old high school chemistry book. It doesn't matter. But the brain loves that. My high school chemistry book, by the way, put me to sleep, and it still does. Anyway, but it can delay dementia by 15 to 20 years. So you got to keep that brain moving, learning. It's very, very important. Eat healthy and exercise often. I can't say this enough. I read somewhere where boomers overall are not healthy. Yes, we live in California. All of us boomers are healthy. I get that. But you look at the South, the Midwest, not so much. So, I know you've heard this from everybody, exercise and eat, but if you want to avoid costly medical bills later, this is a requisite. And certainly world spins on relationships. Networking remains a high priority. As long as you're not looking for a full-time job, networking is easy or is simple. You don't have to go out and play golf. You don't have to be artificial. Just say, hey, this is my brand. This is my impact on an organization. And I think I can help you. Let's discuss what you need. Remember, always go to where people are, not where they should be. That's the step everybody misses. Okay, so here are some resources that I'm offering. One is Wisdom at Work, The Making of the Modern Elder by Chip Conley. The old model is you're born, you go to school. Some of us, you start working, some of us get married, but anyway, you get married, you raise kids, you retire, and you die. Well, Chip doesn't accept that. Chip says there's something else that's going to happen with older people. And he's got plenty of examples in his book, and I should be a VP of sales for this guy. But it's important to know that you bring a lot to the table with younger people. I am now connected with three millennial groups. And I went into them with, hey, how can I help, et cetera. And two of them are now, they've looked at Conley's book and said, yeah, we can probably use this. I like to refer to The Death of a Salesman by Henry Miller. And Arthur Miller, Henry. Oh God, someone.
Arthur Miller.
Thank you, Arthur Miller. Henry was his lost brother. Arthur Miller. Thank you. Don't show me up like that, Ron, again. Okay, don't ever do that. Okay. So anyway, and the reason why his sales went to hell, he stopped selling, and the reason was he only called on people his own generation. That's one of there's lots of lessons from Miller's place, but that's one of them. And so I'm starting to reach all the way down to millennials. I'm starting to reach all the way down to the younger generation. I just stay out of their technology. Doesn't matter, but what we are talking about, it's people and how to, and I haven't monetized it yet, I'm being honest, but I'm getting really close. So I am walking the walk on this. The next one is, this is excellent, The Baby Boomer's Guide to Leveraging Technology by Gary Kitchener. Repurpose Your Career by Mark Miller, a practical guide for boomers. And if you are interested in a mentorship and coach certification, ICF, the International Coaching Federation, can give you a certification. That does go a long way. So being certified helps. But then again, Ron has always known that I was certified. He's known that for over 30 years. And I'm going to talk about media. This is my personal choice, and some of you might say, what's he talking about? But Bryant and May Mysteries by Christopher Fowler. This follows two senior detectives over age 75 who are very active in the London Metropolitan Police Force. They have their own unit that they run called the Peculiar Crimes Unit. They get all the weird stuff. And Bryant is left-leaning, politically wise, and Fowler, and Bryant and John May is to the right. And John May likes to follow by the book, and Bryant goes off the deep end with spirituality and all that stuff. And it's just the relationship really is the reason to read. I've listened to all their books. The reader is phenomenal. And it gets a joy out of saying, hey, all things are possible here. I could do this too. I don't know how many people have seen this. It's called Vera, a BBC crime series. You can see some episodes on YouTube. And the star, Vera, is Brenda Blethyn. Brenda was born in 1946, and she's out solving crimes and using her wisdom. Again, for whatever this is worth, it's just an affirmation that we still got something to give. And Next Avenue was actually not discovered by me; it was by my editor, who made a couple of changes on my presentation here. Why many people start business in retirement. I highly recommend this. And I have a final slide that's probably going to get mixed reviews, but this is not necessarily endorsed by presenter, but here's two old men walking in the park. I don't know about you, but I say it's time we start experimenting with drugs. So Well, hopefully I get some feedback on this one, but I'm looking at the 3 or 4 bottles of 25-year-old single malt scotches, thinking maybe soon I should start drinking those. But all right, okay, that's the end of it. Ron, I'll turn it over to you for questions.
So we've got lots of questions, Randy.
Well, good, because I don't have time to answer them. I gotta go. No, go ahead.
Okay. We'll start from a non-boomer. Emily M has, what about late millennial, early Gen X? I'm sure there's problems for their group too, especially in industry cities with lots of younger people. Do you want to address that? Which is
well, yeah, and maybe it would be time for me to talk about what exactly they are faced with. But in talking to these younger groups, I love it now. Now it's Clubhouse, by the way. It's not Zoom. It's not Zoom meetings. Everyone's into Clubhouse. I'm finding out what's up, and a lot of them are, millennials at least, are confused. Gen Xers are waiting their turn to run companies, and they've been patient up to now, but they're not going to be replacing a retiring boomer. Companies aren't with another boomer. It's not going to happen. They're going to be looking at Gen Xers, and Gen Xers are looking for that opening, that their chance to move up. Many are starting their own company. But let me go down to millennials. Millennials are indeed looking at they don't necessarily believe. They've seen their parents get laid off. They really lack confidence in the corporate ladder. I mentioned boomers want traditional roles. VP of marketing, all marketing reports to me. Well, that's just not how millennials see it. They see things that they want freedom. They want to work. They want things to be meaningful while they're working on their own careers. As a matter of fact, some of them even resent having it called careers. But what they can be doing, though, is my advice to both generations is honor your values. Remember to always feed your soul, because no one else is going to do it for you. Companies are not going to take care of you in your careers and what you want to do. You have to manage this. It used to be with boomers. It used to be, if I do a great job, they'll promote me. It doesn't work that way anymore. You must, if you want to rise up, if you want to say manage more people, or you want to get into a different technology, you have to let the company know that this is my plan to develop. Over here, it matches the company career plan, or excuse me, the company business plan. The business plan and the career plan have to be exactly the same. This is what Gen Xers and this is what millennials have to. They still have that burden of proof is on them. They have to do that. Otherwise, they're going to get used up, and they're going to burn out. Okay. But I've said this before, and I was rejected because I was supposed to give a speech to young financial professionals, and they said, "No, we don't want we don't want you to say that." And that was, I said, millennials in your 20s is the time to experiment and try different things. I used to say in my speeches to these college kids at Menlo, try a lot of different things, but just don't commit a felony. It's okay to commit a misdemeanor. But by age 30, you've had enough time for experimentation. Now it's time to come in and land in an area and keep growing, but doing what you really love. Okay, so that's in brief what and I really hate categorizing. Boomers are this, Gen Xers are this, millennials are this, Gen Y is this. No, yeah, some people have done studies on this, but you're basically in charge. You are in control of your own destiny.
So
okay.
Here's a question from Stephen. Who's driving the economic culture right now? Is it the millennials, Gen X, Gen Z, or the baby boomers?
I think the culture, you're talking about the economics, right, Steve?
Right.
Okay. Right now most companies will take it from any generation they can, which can be misleading. But millennials just don't have the money to spend. 26% of them are still living at home, or some number like that. So, and Gen Xers are way too small of a generation. I think there's only like 30 million of them to really drive it. And I'm obviously thinking out loud, Steve, so bear with me. Boomers now are really concerned about they're starting to get concerned about retirement and how they can supplement their income. And I don't know if you know, but savings accounts have risen dramatically during this COVID time. People are finally getting it they should stash money away. That was just released about a month ago. So to go after one particular demographic, it's okay, but just know that Gen Xers, if you had to pick one generation to go after to appeal to, it probably would be Gen X. Although boomers are still sitting on a fair amount of assets and cash in the bank, et cetera. But millennials they don't have a lot of money to spend. And certainly Gen Y certainly hasn't got it to spend either. So I don't know, Steve, if I answered your question, but those are my own observations without having done a bunch of research on it.
So here's a question from John. Where does diversity fit in all of this in the work,
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question.
in the new workplace?
I've written an article, and it's interesting. Right now I've got an African American, I've got a Latino, and I've got a Latino, and I have another female. And I mentioned that I was writing this article about how the fit is basically a shield to discriminate. And we have to redefine, boy, don't get me started on this. I could talk another half hour on this, but diversity is not about hiring people of different color or different ethnic. Diversity really is hiring people that think differently. I can remember when Andy, oh God, one of the founders of Intel. God, I hate this. Can anybody shout it out? Andy Grove. Andy Grove. I beat you to it. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate that.
Hey, Randy, I'm sorry to interrupt. I've got some feedback about my last experience with this. Since I asked the question, let me know when you want it. And
who's talking? I don't know.
This is John. I asked the question.
Okay. Oh, thanks, John. All right. Let me just finish this one.
Sure.
About diversity,
Mhm.
and we can come back. We can go back to it. Bottom line is it's up to millennials and Gen Xers to redefine what diversity is. People that think differently. Andy Grove, one day after Intel got to be so big, he's one of the founders. He walked around, and because they'd really gotten really big, and lots of them, they like tripled their employment or whatever X. And he started talking to some of the engineers, and he was furious. And the reason why he was furious is that they used the jury selection to hire engineers. And what they wound up with was a lot of mediocre junior engineers because they didn't want to offend anybody when they hired them. Okay, so we want somebody that looks like us, that talks like us, that thinks like us. And Grove was furious. He said, this is not going to happen anymore because in a startup company, you've got everyone comes together and they're all fighting and they're all whatever. But then when it starts to grow, you start hiring people that look the same that you do. But to look at people that come from a different experience and question. Certainly in the high tech world, you must have experience, or in biosci, you must have experience, which lends itself to we got to hire people that look like us and also think like us and know their technical stuff. That just isn't true anymore. And I'd be happy to take anybody down to the mat on that. But it's up now to the Gen Xers and to Gen Y to start establishing what diversity really means. And also, I think the boomers have created their own. I think we're finding out that this economic recovery does not lift all boats, and unfortunately, many boomers are going to be left out of it. I'm pretty sure of that. So, unlike on past economic recoveries after 2008 and 2001. So, John, you wanted to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. My experience was that, and this was at my last company, and all this stuff started to happen at the beginning of COVID, with the riots and so forth, and they were really interested in kind of leveling the playing field with a company that was over 50% male, and bringing more, diversity into the company.
Sure.
And that could mean ethnic and male versus female into it, and plus education
Mhm.
to all of the people that don't fit into those categories. And it was quite interesting. I won't go into details because we
Okay,
don't
John.
have time, but that
Thank you,
was
John.
my experience. Yeah.
Thank you. I think, remember, equaling the playing field is solving the problem with somebody with a different perspective. I know this may sound a little naive, but that's how we can get past whether it's a male, or it's male or female, whether regardless of ethnic background, whatever. You focus on the problem and the issue, and not, oh, like I get it when a hiring manager says, I got to hire a woman here. I got to hire a woman. No, I get that. I understand that. And that's, I would push back also. I would rather say I want to hire someone who, and I'm going to open this way up. This is the job spec, and you don't do the job spec based solely on experience. How do people think? What's been their experience with diversity? I have a whole list of, I'm writing an article on this, by the way, about how bias and prejudice hides behind the term, hey, it's not a fit. I've seen it too often. All right, Ron, next one, I'm sorry.
Okay, so Emily had several questions. She's not a baby boomer, and do you want to ask your question outright? She's asking about the pros and cons of ageism for boomers, but what are some of the pros and cons for online for younger workers?
Online, wait a minute, I don't know what that means. Online? I'm not sure.
Well, when you're, I would imagine when you're applying, or do you want to ask the question directly, Emily? You could.
Hi, Emily, how are you? I'm here, Emily. I can't hear you. Can you unmute it, Ron? Is she unmuted?
Let's see. I'll unmute you, Emily. Go right ahead and ask your question, Emily.
Oh, actually, I didn't. It's not really a question. I was just wondering.
Sure.
Emily, how someone my age might go about looking for a job. I think I have.
Oh, looking for a job. Sure.
Same difficulties.
Yeah. No, it's see, the world is changing. The whole hiring thing is changing, which is all for the good. And I actually had I gave one to Steve Weiss's outfit, or his group, not too long ago. But think of the job search as a big funnel. That in other words, there's levels of activity. Okay, and if you keep the funnel full of activities such as answering ads, networking, talking to recruiters, being active on social media, but every week my clients who are job searching, they have an activity sheet that they use of what they have to do for the week, and it's a sales model, and you just continue. And if you're interested, I can send out the sample activity sheet. If I'm writing this down, I can send it to Ron, and he can. I hold them accountable, and so when they look back, they maybe didn't get a job offer, maybe not even an interview, but they look back at all the activity that they did because they check it off on the worksheet. So that's Emily. That's a short. That's for all generations right now, really. That you have to stay on it. You have to keep your activity high, because what shakes out, so much of this activity will yield so many phone calls, et cetera, et cetera. I will say about 1.5 years ago, I did this research, which I have shared with everybody before. I said, if a person relies solely applying online, and whether it's a company website, it's Indeed, LinkedIn, whatever, what's the probability of getting an offer? And I found out that it was 1 chance in 1,000 of getting an offer if you stick strictly to applying online. To give you some perspective, if you wrote a novel tomorrow, you'd have 1 chance in 256 of it landing on the New York Times bestseller list. So yes, applying online should only be like 5%, or maybe at the most 5-10% of your job search activity. The rest of it is other networking, things that I just outlined. I do have a whole job search presentation, but anyway.
So here's a question from Thomas. Thomas, do you want to unmute and just ask your question directly to Randy?
Sure, Randy, I appreciate your presentation. I got some feelings that you were speaking to specific regarding this age group of baby boomers. And I've heard some questions related to millennials and Gen Xers, and I appreciate the other perspectives that they perhaps may have helped elicit from you. So my question was actually related back to boomers, and it was related to the question of not all boomers feel the need to continue working full-time with a salary stream, as you have on the top of your presentation suggested, for you at least. Is there a work-life balance, right? So maybe another table that shows the percentage and perhaps your reasons or suggestions how that work balance would look like for people in the baby boomer group.
Sure. I think if you may recall, we talked about the options people have. None of those options, we talked about coach, trainer, mentor, et cetera, et cetera. You make your own hours. See, this is the big deal, consulting. You can keep your work-life balance going. When I said making more money, it won't necessarily be it probably won't be a salary. Okay, many boomers have experienced working a 60-hour work week on salary and probably winding up with an hourly rate of $10 an hour because they're working so many hours. Those days are behind boomers. That's not going to happen again. So basically, boomers are in charge of, they're driving their own bus here. Okay, they choose who gets on the bus and they choose where the bus goes. And you choose your own schedule on the bus. Does it run twice a day, twice an hour? It's entirely up to you. You will not have to manage it. Tom.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay, fair enough.
Fair enough. My experience has been before COVID and shelter in place. I was offered in my field of expertise is health biotechnology, right? Medical manufacturing, and Apple was offering me a consultant job, and it was at a good 3-figure per hour rate, half remote, half in the office. And right before it happened, they had to withdraw because they had to, of course, reassess what they were going to do with their budget for consultants after shelter in place and COVID. So I was in that space right kind of in the middle where I was still marketable for these newer technology companies. But now that it's not the same situation as last year, 1 year ago today, do you have a prospects for the types of consultancies for this age group that, and I thought you mentioned some of the fields and some of the vocations that might be more viable for us as professionals, mentors, teachers, that type of thing. Do you still see a full-time in the biotechnology field in particular for people like me who have been there for 20, 30 years now, still a viable option, and maybe not even, I'm looking at the prospect of the same salary level or even the same title, right? Because I'm kind of looking, maybe I'll have to step back if my demands are not that I've made in my career growth path. They may be less, and I'm finally realizing that may be the case here.
Okay, Tom, you don't have to answer this question because it's personal. How old are you?
Well, I'm right about considering retirement.
Okay. See, it all comes down to, are you happy day to day? What that you now can make decisions. You don't suffer fools gladly anymore. I did that in my 30s and 40s. I worked with venture capital firms and people I didn't particularly want to hang around, didn't like. Today, you can pick and choose. Okay. And believe me, if you're going to go into retirement, that look at some of these other jobs to stay active. But I would say offhand that if you're that close to retirement, I would say I would not want to hire you full time. I'm not sure I don't know what you would ever have for me. Okay, to what I would need from you to hire you full time. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not looking at an FTE position. I'm looking at consulting.
Yeah, consulting. Well, consulting, working with consulting, kind of like the movie The Matrix. There's the beginning. For every beginning, there's an ending. For every ending, there's a beginning. And this is true here. That you'll notice that age discrimination drops significantly when you're talking about a short-term deal. They don't care as much. You can still be discriminated against, but not nearly as much as if you were applying full-time. The point I was trying to make is I don't think boomers should be focusing on full-time anymore. That's all. That's my opinion. And I think they have to get 55 and up.
Randy, I was going to ask you a question about different industries, and it's kind of been referred to, Thomas, referred to that.
Yeah.
About government and education and nonprofits. What are some thoughts about that, of the realities going on with those industries?
Well, the only thing I can tell you, the one way what respond off the top of my head is Biden yesterday announced a big tax increase for everybody. We got to start paying. We got to start paying the piper here. What that means is I don't know if the public sector is going to grow that much. If anybody tells you what's going to happen in the future, run from them. And I'm just letting you know what my considerations are. And I don't, now we're talking about the federal state level, although state of California invested wisely. They're brimming. State of California is brimming at their coffers because they've invested wisely in the stock market. So if you take each state on a state on a case by case basis, but I don't see much happening in the federal piece now. But let's go to nonprofits. People are still wanting to do good and write checks to nonprofits. I think nonprofits, if I were to look at it, nonprofit would be the place I'd want to look at. But understand that overall, the trend in nonprofits now, and I know some of this because I coached 2 senior execs at the nonprofit level. And what they've said about a year ago or so, before COVID, they said that nonprofits have to learn how to be self-sustainable. In other words, they got to break even. Okay, it's no longer just good enough. It's no longer enough to say we're doing good for people. They have to show results. They have to look more like a company. Angels, people, even grants, okay, they ask the question, how will we know we're getting that you're doing good? And for a lot of nonprofit people, this is, oh, we're going to be too much like a company. Well, it's changing, in my view. Nonprofits have to show that they're getting results. They just have to. They got to put metrics in there. Okay, so it comes down to, and as a matter of fact, I helped one nonprofit. I didn't help them. I coached one nonprofit. They did it themselves, but one nonprofit had to add metrics. They did the underserved. They helped the underserved. They taught them how to use computers, gave them a nice certificate, and said, "Go, have a nice life." And so the question that the grant had for the next round was, what happened to them after they got their computer certificate? And they had no idea. So we put into play follow-up and placement and job search. So yeah, it's, but I would go to the nonprofits, especially a nonprofit you believe in. That's critical. That's critical, but stay away from the nonprofits are saying, we do good. And you say, well, how do you know you're doing good? Oh, we just do good. Don't bother. That's a personal belief of my value of mine, but anyway.
So Jess has a question. Do you want to unmute yourself, Jess?
Just wanted to chime in. Thank you, Randy, by the way. Excellent. Great information.
Thanks, Justin. Thank you.
I wanted to mention to Emily and anyone else listening that, to fill that funnel, that's a lot of effort over the week and personal accountability. And a great way to handle that is to be on a success team or have an accountability partner. And Phase 2 Careers is managing that, and I help facilitate a success team right now. And I just encourage people to not do it alone.
Thank you, Jess. And you're a great resource. And just if you have questions about the success team, you could address them to either Jess or myself, and I'll pass them along. Thank you, Jess, for that. Other questions from our audience?
I have one anecdote, Ron, I want to put in here. It'll take about 2 minutes. About several years ago, one of my clients was an adjunct professor at Menlo College, and he taught marketing and business. Okay, so he had me talk to the juniors and seniors, and I took them through the values assessment. Okay, a shortened version of it. And I told them I had a piece of paper folded and I said, on here is, I took the same assessment. And but it was folded up and I put it in my pocket. So when the assessment was done, people got up and they said, okay, what, et cetera, et cetera. And they talked about what their values were, the top 4 or 5 anyway. And we were kind of done with that. And I opened up my sheet, the piece of paper that had my values on it that I filled out before. And do you realize that I had similar values to almost everybody in the class? Honesty and integrity, family. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff in there that we had in common. So if we're going to connect the generations, let's look at the values. Let's see how we connect values wise. All right, that's why I just wanted to put that in, Ron. Go ahead.
So Craig asks, is there a list for a full-time listing, but doesn't mention contracting? Should you mention you're open to contracting? When you apply, how do you present yourself?
Oh, well, you don't, my thing is you don't ever apply for a full-time position saying you're open to contracting. It doesn't work. Okay. Better to not use the resume at all. Follow through. If you're going to interview for a full-time job, get the phone call, get the interview. Okay. But most people, they have it full-time because they've gotten approved. They want a full-time person. And, now at the conclusion of every interview, this is part of my interviewing talk, was, what did I say? Oh, that both parties want to win. If it looks like it's not a fit, you always focus on the fit. There's no right and wrong answer in an interview. So that takes the heat off. Together, you seek out the interviewer as an ally, and the two of you are looking for the fit, right? And so if it's not going to be a fit, you won't get an offer. But my clients think on their feet saying, gee, I'm not sure this is going to go, while they're in front of the interview of the hiring manager. Is there anybody else in the company that I should be talking to? And that's when you can open it up to full-time or short-term contract.
So Larry had a question, but Stephen had a question. And do you want to ask your question, Stephen?
Hey, Steve.
Hi, Randy. Randy, are you familiar with returnship programs?
Returnship?
Yeah.
I want to
You
make
know
sure I
what
heard
that
that.
is?
Never heard of it. Thank you.
Well, let's see. Let me back up a little bit. It used to be that gaps in employment were a detriment. If you were been out of the workforce for a year or more, it was a real problem for you.
Sure.
But since companies are now more and more interested in diversity and inclusion, they're reaching out to people who have been out of the workforce, and that includes people in older generations. And they've instituted about 200 companies, large and medium-sized companies.
That's good.
A lot of companies in the Bay Area have instituted what they call returnship programs, where they're actively recruiting people who have been out of the workforce, professional people that have been out of the workforce for a year or more. So it's an opportunity. I think we just had a presentation in our group about this. It's an opportunity for people and probably boomers and Gen X's to get back into the workforce, particularly if they've been out of the workforce for a while. And a lot of people have because of COVID.
No, I think, we talked about lifting all boats, right? The recovery, I mean, the jobs that are coming back are the hourly, okay, or the short-term contract jobs, which can't be a surprise to anybody. People are crying for help in their warehouses, or more drivers. It's interesting. I live here in Marin, and BMW up here means basic Marin wheels, right? But anyway, I saw somebody delivering food from delivering packages of food from Whole Foods, and they were in a BMW. Draw your own conclusion from that. I think the plus side of all of this, if anything has a silver lining, is we've all had a chance to take a look at ourselves, like what's really important here in my life, and to get away from what was normal and get out of that mindset. And this is an opportunity to maybe redefine, because you're going to have to anyway, reinvent. My guess, Steve, on this returnship program is they're getting a lot of people. I don't know how much money they're investing in training, how much money how much patience they have to bring people in their budgets, or whether these are hourly jobs, whatever they are. But some of the financial considerations, such as a 60-year-old or 60 to 65-year-old, as long as you keep them under 20 hours a week, you want to pay their benefits. So a lot of those things are still important, or are still key factors, I should say.
Yeah,
The
and
ones,
Emily
the ones
pointed
that
out-
sorry.
Oh,
The
go
The ones
ahead.
person-
that the returnship programs that I'm aware of tend to be sort of in the same way that an internship would work.
Okay.
About 6 months, full-time, can be both remote work and in-place work, and at a lower rate than regular staff. So they're attractive to a lot of companies
Sure.
if you've got the skills.
That's the big F. Remember, there's two kinds of skills, soft skills and hard skills.
Right.
And we're in technology, where people fall down is, I don't have the hard skills. That's a problem. The people aren't going to hire you if you're a BA in history and you've been selling books at the local bookstore, if they still exist. And they're not going to bring you into a high-tech situation, more than likely, unless it's for something that's non-tech or low-tech.
So there's all kinds of returnships, by the way. Emily points out for women, they're targeted. Any other questions relating to the job search now, how the landscape has changed? You've addressed the baby boomer, and just in general, how's it changed? Is any questions from Larry? Had some questions about medical costs. Do you want to ask that, Larry?
Has Larry left the building, like Frazier? Frazier has left the building.
And he should be there. Larry, do you want to ask, you had several comments about medical costs. Do you want to ask them? Okay, well, we have a question.
Returnship would work.
Pardon me?
Looks like Larry's frozen.
Yeah, I think you're having problems with your internet, Larry.
He was.
Yeah, Thomas.
So while Larry is getting ready, I did have a question regarding. I did have a question.
Wait. No. You got to mute Larry. Ron, it's not working.
Yeah.
Larry, Ron, you got to mute Larry. He's not working.
I've got some audio problem.
I'm trying to mute you, Larry. So Thomas, we're going to take first.
Yes, Tom,
and then we'll
please.
come to you. So
Hey,
let me
okay,
mute
yeah.
you first.
Yeah, so I heard a aspect of returning to work here in 2021 related to the COVID challenges, and that was remote work versus on-site work. You see more possibilities, in particular for boomers who may be more comfortable on-site, right? Because as you've kind of alluded to, the technology for working off-site remotely might be more of a challenge for the older group as opposed to the younger group who's just so familiar with all the technologies out there. Do you see that as an impediment for the olders to,
Actually, no,
to be more remote?
Remember, boomers create their own reality here. They can make it an impediment if they want to. Where I read in The Economist, it said, the remote working, it's not a revolution, it's an evolution. Okay, let's keep that in mind. So where we're headed was, some people want to come back to the office. Some people want to stay at home. Other people want to do both, in and out. I talked, one of my clients works for Baxter. I got to be quiet here. Be careful how I say this. But the CEO of Baxter says everyone has to be back in their office. Everybody does. Not a good decision. There are people that don't want to commute anymore. There are people that have kind of rediscovered themselves. There are people that want to do different kinds of things. People want to stay independent. And I said at the time when all this was happening, I said that we can the micromanager, we can kiss them off, because remote working won't work for them. So I don't think anybody is, but the hybrid workplace is definitely where it's going. Okay. And if a boomer needs to be in an office, well, that's their choice. They're limiting themselves, but they can do it if they want to. If they have to have a lot of people, I mean, the number of people I've talked to, both as a headhunter and as a coach, I got to be in an office. I got to be hanging around the water cooler. I need people. I need energy. And I believe them. I believe them. I don't know what they've done in the last 12 months, but they have to be back in the office. And that's a good thing. If for them to be productive and happy and thrive, an office space would be good for them. However, I think the bullpen, you know, all the different queues and, you know, the cubicles and all that's going to be out for an indefinite period. I don't see it ever coming back.
Okay, I think Larry is, so if you could articulate your question, Larry, go for it.
Yeah, sorry, guys. I've been having some connectivity issues this morning, to say the least. Randy, the first thing was the medical. Actually, it's not the companies directly. You know, your full-time employee younger than an older worker, they pay the bill, but aren't these largely contractors or Medicare? So it's really not the company paying the medical. So I don't see that quite the issue that you may have.
Well,
mentioned.
thanks for your input, Larry. What I was trying to get to, the point I was trying to make, and maybe I didn't cover every single aspect of it, but in an organization's mind, you know, it's not just paying the medical bills. It's, well, so-and-so got sick. He's 65 and he got sick. Much easier than say a 30 something. They're much more vulnerable to being out sick. It just is.
So I get it now. You're looking at not the direct dollars paid, but this other aspect.
Yeah.
Hey, Randy,
No.
second question. We had some discussion on this. It's not directly related presentation, but it's certainly strongly, I think, indirectly. A lot of the trends you mentioned, aren't they driving us to some form of a UBI that we may see in our lifetime? I mean, UBI. Andrew Yang talked about UBI. This fellow who did it in Stockton just got appointed by Governor Newsom to his economic task force. So where do you see this UBI going in the reality of
What I think Larry's talking about is the universal pay. What's it called?
any thoughts on that?
What's it? What is it called?
Basic income.
Basic income.
Universal basic income and other names too.
Yeah, I think the Scandinavian companies, countries have
Great.
tried this on a limited basis. You know, that's a good question. That's one that economists don't agree on about what the long-term effects of that would be. You know, I might also come back and just say, are you voting? Did you ever push for anybody on the call here? Did you ever push for single-payer healthcare? My son was going to Maastricht University to get his law degree, and I went to Denmark to visit him, strangely enough, and we had coffee with a fellow that downstairs from where he was staying, and I talked to the guy, and because, you know, as you know, Copenhagen is the happiest place on earth. You know, they have universal health care, et cetera, and their education is paid for, you know, by taxes, and, you know, 60% of his profits go to the government in Denmark or in Copenhagen. And I asked him, "Are you okay with this?" And he said, "I'm fine with it. I get good health care. My son has top schooling, you know, is getting educated well, and there's a relaxed feeling here." And so rather than go to the universal wage or whatever, maybe it's an interim step would be single payer healthcare. I'm with the VA. I'm a Vietnam era vet, and I am delighted with my healthcare. So much so I'm having a colonoscopy I'm having a colonoscopy this Friday. No, I can't complain. It's wonderful. I'm getting the VA does they want companies to compete with a bidding on drugs. I get the best drugs for low price. Unlike what the feds do, they still only go to one source. But anyway, I don't get me down that level. But I think the interim step is single payer healthcare, and then we can maybe look at that wage thing.
So here's another type of question from Mariella. How would you suggest to bridge the gap if companies wouldn't want to train you and you lack experience? How long should you allocate to do to doing your suggestion?
I missed the first part of it. In other words, she's, how long do you wait for what?
Well, that I don't, do you want to unmute yourself? I don't understand that myself. Mariella, do you want to ask the question directly? I'll unmute you.
Hi, Mariella, are we on?
Yeah, I tried to unmute her, but you could unmute yourself, but the question is, do companies train now? And how do you deal with if there's a gap? A gap
Well,
between
you find you have
experience-
you have to first of all find out if they train. Okay, you have to find that out first. If they do training, if they don't, then don't bother. I will say this though. Here's something to keep in mind. With AI and machine learning, it's estimated that by 2025, at least 5 to 8 million jobs will be permanently deleted, gone from our economy due to automation. And there are jobs that are slowly evolving out where you can learn how to define and distribute and teach the new automation, like a new platform. And I feel like the government's not addressing this. You know, I fear for Biden because he hasn't taken this into consideration whatsoever. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of unemployed people, a lot, in about 2 or 3 years.
So I see a hand raised, but I want to make sure that we're getting all people. Is there anyone that we haven't heard from first? And then if not, we'll get back to you, Stephen.
There's Mariella. I see her now.
Oh, okay. Are you able to ask your question, or do you want to add to that, Mariella? Okay, we're having a problem. Okay, Stephen, your question?
Can't hear you, Steve. Steve, unmute.
There we are. Sorry. Just to follow up on what Randy was saying about AI and automation, two of the greatest proponents of the UBI idea are Elon Musk and the head of Google, who don't see it just as desirable. They see it as necessary because automation and AI is going to be such a huge force. But at the same time, they point out that because of automation and AI, the cost of living should come down, which will mean that we're not looking at a UBI that has to be up to what it is, what you would need to live on now. That
Right.
in the future it will be less.
Good
But
point.
it's interesting that people like Elon Musk are pushing for something like that.
Okay.
Well,
so-
it'll be especially not very expensive living on Mars. You know.
So
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve.
yeah, thank you for that. So, Randy, we've gone through these periods. Any predictions you have for anything else that we haven't covered about how we do business, how the workplace is transformed?
Sure. Good question. I like to think of myself, because I've been a science fiction nut for a long time, and I like to think about what's going to happen in the future. But I think here's the first observation is relationships will always be important, period. If you're ignoring networking, surround yourself with people who see the world you do, with similar values. They're interested in the same things. And this isn't about job search. This is just about exchanging ideas. Okay. My second, where I don't think AI is going to make much headway over the next 5 to 10 years, are in some soft skills like innovation, strategy, decision making. Even though I said 4 seconds or less, but that's actually going to enhance the decision making process. Anything to do with not ones and zeros, yes or no's, analog or digital. AI is at the moment is making is making is about data and making good decisions based on the data that it comes up with it, such as like in the financial, like in wealth management. That's people are basically wealth managers. I think their careers are limited because they basically, where do they go? They go to a computer to get their answers. And so I think, so those are the two things that, those soft skills, any job that has any of those soft skills in it would be worth going after, providing you've got them, of course. But hard skills always, since I started recruiting back when they were still sending material around the horn. But hard skills will always become, at some point will become obsolete. They always do. I've seen it so many times as a recruiter, now as a coach. Hey, I've learned this, great, but guess what? This is obsolete. Kind of like when you buy your computer 3 or 4 months, or your car for that matter. What is it they say when you drive the new car off the lot? You drive about a mile and you take $1,500 and throw it out the window. But the same thing is true with skills, hard skills. Just because you've got hard skills doesn't automatically put you into the club. Okay, it doesn't automatically get you an offer. It's hard skills plus your network. That's going to be true, and the soft skills. That's going to be true more than ever before for the foreseeable future.
So we'll wind down with one last question from someone we haven't heard. I'd love to hear from someone that we haven't heard. Just if there's a question that hasn't been entertained. And by the way, just filling the space between now and the question being asked, we do have a job search panel tomorrow. It's we'll have 4 panelists giving you specifics about job search, and that's tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Hey, Ron, before you go much further, I have to interrupt. By the way, I invite everybody to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's just Randy Block Career Coach. I'm the only Randy Block Career Coach in the billions of members that LinkedIn has. So I invite everybody to please connect with me.
And I know there was a request for your activity sheet, so I'll
I have it.
ask you for that. Well, unless there's another final question, I want to thank everyone on behalf of Phase 2. Thanks for bringing this new material, mainly for baby boomers, but we have implications for everyone. So thanks, Randy, and thank you all for coming today.
Thank you. By the way, be well, everybody.